Welcome to today's episode of the Everyday Leader podcast. I am super excited to present to you Phillip Enkey. He joins Tate and I as we discuss a bunch of topics really around self-leadership and also not just the importance of developing yourself, but how he has taken his journey into music and how he's blessing people's lives through that profession and really leading others by inspiring people through music. Um, we could have we talked after the episode that this is probably a conversation that could have lasted for hours, and hopefully we'll have him again on the podcast.
Welcome to the Everyday Leader podcast. Leadership is a choice. Join me, Matt, and my co-hosts Drew and Tate each episode as we break down how to lead powerfully in your family, team, and organization.
Welcome to today's episode of the Everyday Leader podcast. We are super excited, Tate and I, to be joined with Phillip Enkey. He's a beautiful man, an amazing musician, and we're really excited to have him come in and share his stories, what he's learned about leadership, how music can inspire others, and how that can be a form of leadership too, and dive into really some fun topics with him today. Hey, Phillip, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us today.
Dude, thanks, man. Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Tate. No, I appreciate the beautiful man comment. I'll take that any day.
Right on. Well, yeah, maybe you could give our listener a brief introduction of who you are, what you're doing, how you got to where you are.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. My name's Phillip Enkey. I'm from North Carolina. I'm a full-time singer-songwriter, and I live in Utah. My wife and we have 5 kids together. I've been doing music full-time now for going on 5 years, and I write inspirational pop anthems. And I create music videos that show real people and real stories. And music's always been my medicine. And the mission of my music is to love the world. And so, as people get to know more about me and my story and the things that I've been blessed to experience, they'll see that one of the things I love to say is, and I didn't create this, I think I heard it from Tony Robbins, but life is happening for me, not to me. And I'm not a victim of circumstance, but all these moments are opportunities to grow and to improve. And so that's me in a nutshell. I love people. I love everyone. I love music and I love creating it and sharing it. And man, I'm lucky. I consider myself one of the luckiest people on the planet. I get to do what I love on a daily basis and feels like I have 6 Saturdays and a Sunday. And I love helping other people find their passion and, chase what's worth it to them.
One of the things I've loved, Phillip, kind of watching you from afar the last few years is you're literally doing what you love. You've made music your entire career. It's not, I think it's, this probably started off as an evening and weekends kind of thing, from what I can tell. And it's your career now. Like, how did that happen? Maybe tell our listener a little bit about that jump from going into what you love into something actually full time and what that looked like.
Yeah, I worked for the post office for just over 8 years. And before I transitioned to doing music full time, I was in middle management at a desk in the post office. And I had joined the Army and I went to Army Combat Basic Training, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and experienced a physical transformation. I lost 50 pounds and I felt amazing. And then I went back to work when I got home because I was in the reserves. And I immediately gained 20 pounds. And I realized that the physical transformation did not convert to a mental or emotional or spiritual transformation. Turns out, when some people are yelling at you and forcing you to do things, it's much easier to lose weight that way. And I realized, man, how much did I really grow? And I realized I was miserable. I loved being a postman. I was actually very proud to be a postman. Um, I I loved that job, but I realized and I think a lot of people can relate to this. There was that inner tension of this is cool, it's productive, makes some money, it makes money for my family, it pays the bills, but I don't feel fulfilled. I feel like I could be doing more than this. Like, um, everybody has their own thing, and there's so much beauty in just finding peace and fulfillment where you're standing. And I'm a big believer in that. But at the same time, I realized this isn't what I was made to do. And so I quit the post office. My wife was really supportive. And at first I went to get a real estate license, and like 2 hours into the course, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so boring. Good grief, land deeds and oh my gosh, I can't do this. And so then I I I got into a course to get I was on, Craigslist and Indeed and Monster Jobs and all those things looking for jobs just because I knew I wasn't happy. And I was like, there's got to be something that can make money and I'm not miserable. Like, is there something like that? Um, and so then I got my life insurance license, and one phone call in, because it was a remote job, I realized, wow, I don't enjoy sales. Um, and then I'd always done music kind of side on a as a side gig just because I'd played guitar since I was a kid. But I never took it serious and I never believed in myself. I always thought at the time, well, I'm not really a singer. I can play guitar, and I never took guitar lessons. I don't know how to read music still. I've learned the basic chords, like what they're called. Um, but Yeah, and I went to, friends would have me play a song or two at their wedding, or I play at like a memorial or a funeral or something like that. And then I realized I was playing music at a restaurant here in Springville, Utah, and a lady was there, and she messaged me on Instagram, and she said, "We'd love to have you come just do a concert for our family in our backyard. We have this annual party we always do, and you should come play some music." And I was like, "Sure." And my wife, this was on DM, and my wife was like, "You got to stop playing for free. Like, you got to start charging something. You got to have a rate." And she was like, "What's your rate?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I took my wife's advice and I messaged back and I was like, 100 an hour. And I literally thought to myself, there goes that gig. Like, great. I just lost the gig because I made it about money. Man. And then she messaged back. She was like, "Okay, great. So we'll have you from 6 to 9. What do you like to drink? What do you need a power source? Like, what's your setup?" And I was like, literally going, hold on, carry the one. I was like freaking out. I was like, that's $300. Are you kidding me, man? Like, this is insane. And so I did it, and I stayed an extra hour just because we're having a blast. And they Venmoed me $400, and I was like, what have I been doing? I was like, I don't want to do insurance. I don't want to do real estate. I don't want to deliver mail. I just made $400 from playing Jack Johnson songs on my guitar. Like, what is this? And I never looked back, man. And it just, you went from there.
That's amazing. No, that's really cool to hear that your wife told you you've got to start charging what you're worth or stop doing it for free. That's awesome.
Yeah, she's brilliant, man.
Philip, could you reshare part of that story? We're having some technical difficulties. I just want to make sure our audience doesn't miss any of that. Could you just re-summarize and share that with us quickly?
Yeah, it's funny because I worked for the post office. It was like in my mind, the quintessential secure job, right? Like a steady paycheck, benefits, 401k, pension, all that stuff. And I just realized I was miserable. I joined the army. I went to basic training at 30 years old. I lost 50 pounds, completely transformed my body. And then I went home because I was in the Army Reserves and I quickly regained 20 pounds. Who'd have thought, man? Dr. Pepper in a desk, it does it to you. And I realized that the transformation happened with my body because of the result of outside forces. When I first got to basic training, the drill sergeant walked up to me and you're in the position of attention and they just make you stand there because they can. And he looks at me and he looks down at my toes and back up at me and he leans and he says, what trimester are you in? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know how to answer this question. And I was like, first, drill sergeant. And this is the edited version because I don't know if you swear on your podcast, but he's like, I don't think so. Your water's about to break, but we're gonna fix that. And they did. They fixed it. But when I got home and regained all the weight, I realized like, man, I'm miserable. There's so much beauty in finding peace and acceptance with where you are, right? Like I don't believe we're victims of circumstance, but at the time I believed that things in my life were happening to me and I had to change things. I had to force it all. And so I quit because I was miserable and my wife was supportive, thankfully, and I started a real estate licensing course and just a couple hours in I was like, this is too boring. Oh my gosh, if I have to listen to one more video about what a deed is, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. And so then I was looking through all the job sites and I found a job selling life insurance from home and I thought, oh, this is great. Everybody's going to remote because of COVID. I can sell something from my office and a phone call in, I realized I did not enjoy sales, or I thought I didn't. Turns out I love sales. I just at the time I didn't know what sales really was. Um, but I was miserable doing that, and but I'd always done music on the side. I'd always played guitar since I was 11. I never took it serious, right? I never thought I was a singer. I couldn't sing. If I played in front of people, my hands would shake, right? But I would get these little gigs on the side. You know, my brother-in-law asked me to play a song at his wedding, or a couple. I served around on my mission. Actually, there in Bountiful, where you served after me, the Hoffmans had me play music at their daughter's wedding. That was amazing. And then I was playing music at a restaurant here in Springville, Utah, and a lady saw me playing, and she messaged me on Instagram to come play an annual event her family holds in their backyard every year. And she messaged me and she said, "What's your rate?" And my wife told me, she's like, "You got to stop playing for free. Like you got to have a rate. Like just set a rate." And I was like, "Okay." And I messaged her back and I said 100 an hour. In my head, I really was like, "Great, there goes the gig." Like I made it about money and now they're not going to want me. And she messaged back and like it's like from what I read it, she didn't even think about it. She's like, "Okay, cool. So we're gonna have you from 6 to 9. What do you prefer to drink? You know, do you need a power source? All this stuff." And I was like, in my head, I was like, "Oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me! Like, this is $300. Like, I could not believe it, bro." And I did it, and I stayed an extra hour just because we were partying and having a blast. And they Venmoed me $400. And from that moment, I was like, okay, I just made $400 from playing Jack Johnson songs on my guitar. Like, I'm, this is it. And I never looked back. And that was it. That was the transition. And so it started. So you asked how to go from doing it nights and weekends to doing it full time. A lot of luck, a lot of persistence, and a lot of investing in myself. Just a lot of. I went to audition at a local restaurant called Maggleby's because you had to audition to play. And you play for 4 hours. They only give you $50. Sometimes they give you food, but you make tips. A lot of well-to-do people go there. And when I auditioned for the manager, he went, "Okay, well, you're a little bit pitchy, but we'll give you a call when we have a slot open up." And that's just a really nice way of saying no. And I was like, wow, I want to do music full time, and I can't even get into the restaurant down on Main Street. Like, how is this supposed to work? um, and so I got a vocal coach, and I went through three different vocal coaches, and I grinded, dude. I grinded. I practiced and practiced, and I played on the streets. I busked. I played markets. I played for free. I play 3-year-old birthday parties. I play assisted living facilities where they don't care how good you are. They'll cut you a check for $60 just to let them drool at you for an hour. Dude, I played everywhere, bro. Bowling alleys, coffee shops, open mics. I auditioned for American Idol. didn't even get anywhere. The Voice, America's Got Talent. Oh, no, 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 no. All the stuff, right? And just slowly, like just a little bit at a time, I'd get a gig here and a gig there. And it was connecting with the right people at the right time, just being persistent and not paying attention to the results, just focusing more on my own growth. And the more I built value in myself, the more the higher paying gigs just started to happen. Until the biggest break was when I got a message from a nonprofit that said, "Hey, would you have any interest in playing your songs for schools, like at elementary schools and stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they didn't mention any money. And because I stopped paying attention to the money. I mean, I did and I didn't, but it's like a tricky balance, right? Like, anyways, I'm sure we can get into that. But then I got on the call with one of the reps from the nonprofit, and they're like, "So you'll play for about 15 minutes. We'll have a mental health speaker talk for 30 minutes, and then you're going to perform for 15, 20 minutes. And we pay $500 an assembly." And it's one of those moments where my wife and I joke about this all the time when we go to H&R Block and we hear the accountant say what do we get for tax returns, and we have a bunch of kids, and they say the number, and on the outside you're like, "Okay, oh, that's cool, all right, well, thank you for your help." But on the inside you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing, you're kidding me." And you're spending the money in your head, right? And you're like, "This is a party, we're going to Chick-fil-A, we're all getting drinks, no water for anybody," right? uh, it was one of those moments. And I was like, "You got to be kidding me. Somebody's going to pay me this much money to play not a Jack Johnson song, but one of my songs." And yeah, that was 2 years ago. And so now it's just, I mean, I can't even tell you the places I find myself in. It's been a party. It's been a blast. And contrary to what most people think, I've never had to compromise my standards in the music industry. I'm married with kids. We've been married 14 years. We have a mortgage. Never once have I ever had to compromise my personal integrity in order to be successful in music. And that's the antithesis to what I thought this would be, that stigma that the industry had when I was growing up, anyways.
Yeah, it's real incredible. I think there's a lot of like clues and things we could unpack in there. One thing that kind of stuck out to me, Philip, as you're talking is maybe this idea of like worth and believing in yourself. And sounds like your wife probably believed in you more than you did when you were getting started. And
Yeah.
it sounds like a lot of the success came in growing yourself as much as it was developing your music abilities.
Yeah, dude,
Yeah,
that's huge.
was was there anyone else in that timeline? I'm sure there was lots of people in a lot of small ways, but was there any other big influences on, encouraging you and inspiring you to kind of step out like that?
Oh, big time. Like my very first vocal coach, her name is Melissa Termini, and such a beautiful human being. She was my very first vocal lesson when I went to her. In fact, I remember being in her living room, crouched over my guitar, so nervous to sing in front of somebody else. Like, again, my hands were shaking, my voice was shaking, and she listened to me sing this song, and she was just so kind and supportive. And she invited me to sing at a recital. And so I go to sing at her recital, and I didn't realize that most her students are kids, right? So I'm at this recital where most of the audience are kids' parents, right? And siblings. And here comes this guy who's 25, 26 at the time, with kids, and married. And my ego's kind of like, what are you doing here, bro? Like, who do you think you are? Like, you think you're gonna, you think you're gonna do music? And yeah, look at you, you're playing with all these little kids. And I played a couple songs, but I loved it. And she was a big influence on me. So many people along the way. My dad always believed in my music. Anytime when I was a kid and I'd write a song, I'd always go play it for my dad first because I knew he was a safe audience. But yeah, so many people, and of course my wife. My wife and I met when we were 14, and she always believed in me, and she always loved my songs. You know, when you're blinded by the bias of romance, everything sounds good. And that's been the beauty of it, right? Like even now, like it's I have this beautiful tension inside my awareness where on one hand, dude, I grind my ass off. Like I practice, I rehearse, I constantly learn new songs. I'm constantly listening to podcasts, listening to Tony Robbins, Peter Crone, Joe Dispenza, trying to just build value and increase my knowledge and awareness. But at the same time, I am only where I am because of so many moments where people invested in me and sewed into me when they owed me absolutely nothing. And they got nothing out of it. They would coach me, or they would give me money, or they would give me an opportunity, or they would connect me with someone. And they literally got nothing out of it. They just sewed into me. And so it's such a beautiful realization. And that's when you talk about leadership, that's really where my music has grown the most. When I stopped focusing on my own survival and started asking myself, how can I actually bring value to this business, to this person, to this family? When I'd go into a funeral or memorial, or when I was going into a restaurant or working with a nonprofit, like instead of how can I get them to give me enough money to pay X bill, what value can I actually bring to this transaction, to this relationship? And when I started looking through that lens, I started realizing this is why I've gotten so much help. It's because the people that have helped me weren't looking at me as a transaction. They looked at me as a human and they just wanted to help. And it was interesting when I let go of all the fight or flight, fearful survival things when it comes to business and sales and entrepreneurship and just embraced. I mean, it sounds so hippie, but it's so true. Just embrace love and kindness and giving. And it's beautiful because when you look at the free market, that's all it wants, right? The market just wants value. So it's been really humbling.
You you touched on something at the beginning, and I think this is the perfect time to kind of follow up on it. But you mentioned trying to inspire others and to kind of step into that freedom that you found and the passions that you're chasing. And how are you doing that? How, like, can you share kind of your approach to that and maybe some of the interactions you've had with people?
As far as inspiring and experiencing that freedom to do so, yeah. Honestly, the biggest thing, Tate, has just been working on myself, like working on my own healing. And dude, I've been meeting with the therapist for 2 years. I've been meeting with a life coach for years. I've been meeting with a mindfulness meditation coach, trying all the different diets, going to different seminars, signing up for different guru courses, like just looking and searching. And that's been where the biggest value has come to my music business, has been investing in myself and investing in my personal growth, and then experiencing financial gain and growing my network, which is your net worth, has been just more of an effortless byproduct of creating freedom and healing within myself. Because I realize the more I heal on the inside, it creates space that becomes a vacuum for creativity, for innovation, and it allows me to just be myself, just be genuine, just to be me. And that's a really safe space to be in because it's hard to try and keep putting up a facade. It's exhausting to try and keep being something you think people will accept, or you think businesses will buy, or you think, groups will follow. It's exhausting. Like you can't sustain, at least I couldn't sustain that. And so that's been the biggest help for me is just investing in myself and accepting that not having all the answers is right where I should be right now. Like not knowing your path, that's your path. Like, and that's okay. Like Don't rush it. Don't push it. The fact that you know you can be doing better and you want to do better is so beautiful. And I think the ironic thing is the moment we accept the things we can't control and accept the things about ourselves that we don't like, all the things that used to be in the way kind of just fall asleep and tend to dissolve. And a space opens up where you can create, you can inspire, you can innovate, you can problem solve in a way that's way more efficient and way more beautiful and transforming than being in the space of, oh, how do I do this? I got to figure it out. Like, am I good enough? Like this fight or flight survival mentality. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's been my experience.
Mhm.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to explore with you, Philip, and we kind of talked about this before. Part of what we believe is that a leader is somebody who inspires other, who helps people go where they haven't gone before, who, maybe unlocks new things for someone else. And I think music does that in a lot of ways for people. And I think
Yeah.
I thought it'd be cool to explore the idea that, hey, maybe music is or can be a form of leadership. I know a lot of your music is centered and geared towards helping those that are struggling or hurting in their life. Like, how have you seen music be a form of leadership to people?
Dude, that's a
How have you
beautiful
seen it
question.
inspire people?
Yeah, I love that question, Drew. That's at the heart of what I do because I'm a big believer. One of my favorite thinkers, his name is Rick Rubin. And one of the things that he teaches, and this will relate to your question, I feel pretty well, is he says when you're writing music, when you're making art, the audience comes last. It has to. The audience has to come last. Because the audience doesn't know what they want. They only know what they've heard so far. And the best thing that you can do for any audience is to create art, whatever your art is, whatever your craft is. And I'm a big believer that everything is art, honestly. The best thing you can do is to create something that tastes good to you, that feels good to you, that liberates you, that gives you the elevated emotion, that makes you feel in that moment inspired, worthy, moved, expanded. And if you can create something that tastes good to you, that's the only thing that matters. And sometimes you'll create something that tastes so good that you'll say, hey, you should taste this. You guys want to taste this? You guys want to hear this? And if people hear it and are like, it's not my cup of tea, that's fine. That's cool. It'll find the people that it's right for. And the reason why I think that's so valuable to this principle of leadership is because your business and your vision can only expand and be as successful and as healthy as you are on the inside. And music has a way, Tesla said if you want to understand the universe, you've got to understand it in the sense of, and I'm heavily paraphrasing, but if you want to understand the universe, you got to think in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration. And music addresses all of those, and it's a place where when you hear or feel a song and you have that feeling, and everybody knows this feeling, anybody listening will know this feeling. When you hear or feel a song that moves you, that speaks to you, it is speaking to a part of you that you can't deny. There's a connection. There's an outside sound or vibration that's coming in. And the reason it resonates is because it's speaking to something inside of you. Whether it's a sad song that's speaking to your heartbreak, or it's a resolute song that's speaking to your determination, or if it's a celebratory song that's speaking and bringing out gratitude in you for things you've accomplished. Music is a medium where the individual discovers that everything happening inside them isn't unique to them, but it's a universal phenomena that every human being is experiencing all these wheels of emotions that we experience as humans. And it's a bridge that everybody can walk across and see all the beauties that life has to offer and have moments of realization where you can be reminded of who and what you really are and what you can really do. It's in the moments where we're listening to music that we daydream, that we that and that daydreaming isn't limited to time. Sometimes you listen to a song and it'll remind you of a past experience, and it'll bring up a sadness, and that's a gift. Like if you have sadness within yourself from a past moment, a song bringing that out in you is a beautiful moment where you can heal, where you can feel that aching, if it's someone you lost or a relationship that's not there anymore, whatever it is, and with whatever emotion. And so I feel like great leaders are people that don't force individuals or compel circumstances. They open up people. They have this openness with themselves and with others that allows creativity and innovation and entrepreneurship to flow. It's a natural flow that can take place. And good leaders, they start to experience that flow within themselves. And when you can experience that flow within yourself and allow yourself to experience all the emotions that life has to bring, then and unblock these blockages, because the ego naturally wants to protect itself. And music has a beautiful way of opening us up and allowing this flow to happen more naturally. And if you can allow that to happen within yourself, and then people can pick up on that, and then the ability to teach that, to share it, and to bring it out in other people, it'll just come naturally, and it won't feel so manufactured or stressed, or what do I say, or what do I do, what's the script here. Like that'll be less and less, and it'll just become more of who you are. And so just that practice of listening to music and feeling it, and not trying to figure it all out. Like you don't have to figure it all out, you don't have to have the answers, just feel it.
Yeah, good stuff. No, as you've been talking, Philip, I just thought of an experience I want to share. Um, I took piano lessons for 10 years from a really good teacher. Her name was Jenna Mosley in Duncan. She could play anything by ear. She'd written all kinds of music. She charged $2.50 a lesson for piano, which was way below what she was worth. And I think she did it because she just had a desire to serve the community. Um, where I'm from is a pretty small place, but probably taught hundreds of students over the years. And I
That's
remember
beautiful.
a couple of years ago going to her funeral and not expecting this. I was so emotional during that funeral because I realized the impact she had had on me and the music had in my life. And it was funny because I don't play like I used to, or play as much as I used to, and I still love music. And it was interesting being there at that funeral to have that emotional experience and realize, wow, this really had an impact on my life. And I
Mm.
didn't realize that that impact was as big as it had been until I sat there and reflected on it. And so yeah, no, cool hearing you say all those things about what music can do, because I think it's such a powerful way to inspire and to motivate and to lift. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and that's real leadership, right? That relationship. I mean, she sewed into you, as you obviously felt when you attended her memorial service. And I think that's what real leadership is. It's that it's a relationship, first with ourselves and then with others.
yeah,
I was just thinking how well this applies, and I love Drew's analogy of how music and leadership can be one and the same. Because one of the things we believe as a group at the Everyday Leader is that we have influence on people whether we acknowledge it or not. And at the base of leadership, it's having influence on other people. And yeah, I think you can't argue that those who have created music, played music, just love music, haven't been moved and influenced by it. And so, yeah, I absolutely love that concept.
Mm. Yeah, I think music is a tool, right? And I think good leaders find the best tools. Yeah, no, I think good leaders find the best tools, right? the best tools to build themselves up and to build up others. And music is one of those tools you got to have in your toolbox, man. It's appropriate for all scenarios, I feel like.
Yeah. What would you say, Philip? How can someone, whether they're musically talented or not, how can someone be a leader every day to others in their life?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, and I'm glad you used that little asterisk there in your question because your talent level is really irrelevant when it comes to music. Talent is irrelevant when it comes to any mode of art, in my opinion, because art isn't about selling tickets or filling seats or streams or how many clicks. Art is about expressing yourself. It's a medicine. And so talent level isn't required. You don't have to be good at anything to do it, especially music. But when it comes to being a good leader, how can you be a good leader for others? It's being a leader for yourself first. And the mission of my music is to show the world what love can do. And real love will always include yourself. And sometimes we have this idea that real love is sacrificing, and there could be moments, of course, where sacrifice is necessary, but real love at its core always includes yourself. And so you have to take care of yourself. You have to, and in fact, one of my favorite definitions of love is seeing someone where they are and accepting them. I feel like acceptance is a word that's synonymous with love. Seeing someone where they are, accepting them, and helping them meet their needs. It doesn't mean you're the one that meets their needs. It just means you see where they are, you accept them, and you do what you can to help them get what they need. That's real love. And it can express itself in all different forms through family relationships, through romance, through transactions, through partnerships, networking. But that first relationship that you really need to work on is the relationship with yourself, the love that you have for yourself, and really seeing yourself, which is why you got to get help. You can't have a car and not get an oil change, right? Like you got to have an annual checkup for your physical health. You find whatever medium works for you, whether it's therapy, whether it's a support group, whether it's a local church or friends who enjoy a craft or a hobby that you enjoy. But you got to get help and you got to work on yourself. And the best way you can lead other people is learning to lead yourself with love. You've got to learn to love yourself and have acceptance for yourself, especially the parts of yourself that you're a little ashamed of or embarrassed about. That's been the biggest transformation for myself. And I've battled addiction for years, an addiction to opioids, and the addiction lost its power, and all my addictions lost their power to food, to sex, to drugs of all kinds. But they all lost their power when I stopped fighting them and I stopped being ashamed of them. And I realized I'm a human being, and this part of me that's seeking something it feels like it's missing is a part of me. And I've been fighting this part of myself, covering it up, hiding it, ashamed of it. And the moment I brought it out into the light and said, you know what, it's okay. I love you. I see you. The ego doesn't want to be healed, it wants to be held. It's one of my favorite Peter Crone quotes. Your ego doesn't want to be healed, it wants to be held. And the second you stop fighting it and just accept that it's a part of who you are, just like a screaming child, when you stop and listen to them and hold them, they eventually fall asleep. And that's when all my former addictions lost their power. And so if you want to be a great leader, you've got to first learn how to be a leader over yourself. And being a leader over yourself, you have to have love for yourself. It's not a transaction of force or compulsion or judgment or shame. It's an act of love, acceptance, seeing yourself and accepting yourself and helping yourself to heal and love. And that's real leadership. And when it happens on the inside, leadership on the outside is just an effortless byproduct. People see it, people know it, because they know you actually care about them. They know you don't have an agenda. Your only agenda is help, hope, healing, and that can sound kind of, in fear of sounding too esoteric or too religious, but really it's an explosion of effectiveness in the free market, because all the free market wants is value. That's all it wants, right? That's what any business or transaction or consumer want. They want something of value. And if you yourself can find the value within yourself, oh my gosh, buckle up and keep your hands and feet inside, because you're going to watch your business do things it's never done before.
Can you touch or give some thoughts around culturally our society and the conversation of shame and how that plays into just so much beyond our families, whether that's our church groups, whether that's, our hometowns, and really overcoming that. I mean, I know you touched on it there with some of the self-love, but I think that's such a big thing in our society today, is allowing people to just set in that shame and never learn what to do with it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. It's a natural thing. It's a human thing, right? Like, and it's okay, right? So everybody wants the same thing. We all want to be happy. And one of my favorite quotes from Peter Crone is, he says, "You can't be held accountable to something you're oblivious to." And so everybody's surviving. Everybody's doing the best they can with what they have. And something that really helped me reconcile my past, and I think it'll speak to your question, is what happened happened, and it couldn't have happened any other way. Why? Because it didn't. And so you can look back on an experience in your life and you can say, I should have known better, I should have done better. You can look back with greater intelligence, greater wisdom, greater awareness, and say, I should have done this or I could have done that. And that was so stupid. But looking back and saying that is also stupid, because you couldn't have done it any differently than you did. Why? Because you didn't. And so looking back and judging yourself, it doesn't help. And so this exercise of, everything, all the suffering that we experience, it's all happening between our ears, right? The only thing in the way of you getting what you want is the story you keep telling yourself of why you can't have it. And when we're in this victim mindset of, I am the result of all these experiences in my past, and I am the result of circumstance, of the things happening around me, it's a very powerless proposition, because we can't change the world around us. We can only focus on changing the world inside of us. And so when that happens, we can have a lot of compassion on ourselves. When you can look back on those moments and say, yeah, I actually couldn't have done that any differently than I did, because I didn't know any better. In that moment, I really thought that was the best thing for me. Whatever the behavior was, doesn't matter what it is. And when you can learn to have that compassion on yourself, that's when you can start to see and have compassion on the world around you, on your local church, on your mother-in-law or your brother-in-law or your ex, all these people you feel have hurt you. We can have compassion on ourselves and we can say, what happened happened. It couldn't have happened any other way. Why? Because it didn't. And so what I can focus on is this moment. And when you can really have compassion and forgive yourself and say, I'm learning and I'm growing. And if I knew then what I know now, here's what I would do differently. That's real reconciliation. Real forgiveness is learning from an experience while losing all the emotional energy that's attached to it. And when you can really forgive yourself and have compassion on yourself, a natural extension of that is having forgiveness and compassion on the culture that does have a habit of shaming and judging, but it's just the result of being human. It's humans being human. When I was trying to heal, I thought I needed to forgive the people that I perceived hurt me. When I really healed, and as I really heal, I learn more and more there's nothing to forgive. Everybody's doing the best they can with what they have. It doesn't make it right. These scenarios are not ideal, and we have to have compassion on ourselves and others because, you know, people are going through a lot of really tough stuff that really sucks, that really hurts. And you can't tell I lost my mom in a car accident when I was a kid. I was sexually abused and raped when I was 14. 3 back surgeries and finding out I had a sister from my mom who died that I never knew existed. But people I knew and loved knew she existed the whole time and didn't tell me. All these experiences, whatever it is that you're going through and experiencing, it's a powerless proposition to try and look for people around you to accept you and to validate you. You're not going to get very far. You're just going to keep getting a lot of the same things. And what really was the breakthrough for me was realizing the acceptance and love and validation I was craving the whole time wasn't from my mom. It wasn't from my dad. It wasn't from my bishop. It wasn't from my wife. It was from myself. That's the part I was missing. So we can't change the culture. At least I can't. I don't have that power. But if we can start to have compassion on ourselves, then we can kind of see more of what's happening as it really is and have compassion on that culture.
What can we do as parents and leaders to help our kids with exactly what you're talking about? Maybe earlier. Is there a way we can, or is it just something we as people, individuals, have to experience and go through the journey?
Yeah, I do believe there is a way we can, but I think the answer is into the second part of your question. At least that's my perspective. And I'm always open and trying to learn and see more, but I really believe, you can't have a world at peace when individuals are at war with themselves. And that's really where the work starts. For me, it's where it's shifted me as a parent. And if you want like a personal practice, like something small that a listener can take away from this, something that they can practice. And it's exactly that. It's a practice. It's not an execution. So when you get on yourself for not practicing consistently, you're missing the point of the practice, right? When you start to guilt yourself and get mad at yourself, you're missing the point. You're supposed to be loving yourself and learning through the process. But one practice that's really helped me, especially when you talk about as a parent and as a leader, this right here is my resistance log. So what I do is I write in here every day any moment of resistance. Anytime I experience an emotion that I think I don't like. Because really every emotion, all the emotions are just different paints on a palette. They're all needed to create the beautiful picture of life. And when we stop fighting them and start looking at them, Carl Jung said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I think I'm pretty close. He said, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. In other words, we have all these deep conditioning within ourselves and these subconscious beliefs about the world and about ourselves. And until we bring them to the surface and look at them, they're going to direct our life. And a lot of the things we're experiencing, the self-sabotage, it just keeps repeating itself. The relationships, the what we see and characterize as failures, they just keep repeating themselves. And it's a frustrating cycle. And if you find yourself saying words like I should have, I need to, I'm supposed to, I could have, why didn't I? Right? The language we speak reveals the prisons that we live in. And really the practice of bringing the unconscious to the conscious surface. And I'll give you an example. So I write every moment of resistance in this log on a daily basis. And one of them that I wrote about was my 8-year-old daughter would come to me at night when it was bedtime. And you guys are parents, so you know how this goes, right? Like when it's bedtime, it's like it's my turn, right? This is my time. Like I love you. Get away from me. And my daughter, she would do this thing where she'd come up to me, good night, Dad, love you, and give me a hug, like 3 or 4 or 5 times. And I would get so frustrated, like, why are we, okay, we did this already. And then I would get mad at myself, like, My daughter is asking me for a hug and saying I love you. Why is this annoying me? I'm a bad father. And all this self-judgment and criticism. When I started writing this in my resistance log and seeing it, here's the good news. When you keep a resistance log, my initial fear was, great, I'm going to have a list of reasons why I suck. But the good news is...
I was just going to ask you that.
Right, so here's the good news. The first step is awareness. Then it's practice. And if there's somewhere you want to get, you first need to understand why you're where you currently are. Like if there's a result or a destination you want to get to, the only way to get there is to first understand why I'm getting what I'm currently getting. And the mind is a beautiful thing. And this is the good news, and it'll hopefully put some resolution to your question. You don't have to work it out. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is look at it. Just bringing the unconscious to the conscious will heal, and the solutions will happen organically, right? You know you're really healing when the white knuckle struggle is leaving you. All you have to do is be patient with yourself and have grace for yourself in the process. And here's what it looked like for me. As I would write it out, we just did the bedtime with Evelyn for the third time. Frustration. Just did the bedtime routine with Evelyn for the fourth time. Annoyance. Okay? I didn't have to sit here and figure it out and come up with a solution and work out the problem. All I had to do was look at it and have compassion and hold space for myself. That's what self-love really is. It's saying, okay, I was annoyed with my 8-year-old daughter for giving me giving me a hug and saying she loves me. And I felt annoyed by that. Okay, the ego doesn't want to be healed, it just wants to be held. Just holding that and seeing it. Okay, I see. What happened after the third day of doing this was it finally clicked. And it didn't click for me trying to figure it out and solve it. And what clicked for me was, oh, she's going to bed. She's scared. And when I would come from the energy of, okay, hurry up, hug, good night, love you, okay, bye, so I can get to my video game, or I can get to my show, or I can get to my favorite snack, she wasn't feeling love. She wasn't feeling assurance. She wasn't feeling protection. She wasn't feeling seen. And when that realization dawned on me, oh. And so then what I did the next night, was when she came up to hug me, I held her, and in my mind I said, I'm not letting go till she does. I'm just going to hold her. And we held each other for like 3 minutes. And I just kissed her multiple times, and I said, I love you so much. And while you're sleeping, I'm going to be protecting you. And you're going to be safe. And monsters are scared of daddy. And then she let go, never came back. And until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will forever direct your life, and you'll call it fate. And that's the good news. You don't have to fix it. All you got to do is start looking at it. Just look at it. That's real leadership, looking at yourself and holding space and love for yourself. And the wounds will heal themselves. You don't have to have the answers. I'm no guru, man. I've been meeting with a freaking life coach and therapist and watching all the YouTube videos and spending money on all this stuff, man. And it's funny, the irony is I've been looking to the outside and not realizing that all the answers were on the inside. And I believe that's real leadership, is taking ownership, acceptance, and love for yourself. And that's when the whole world changes. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change.
Yeah. Phil, thanks for so many amazing insights today. And you could have, like, a lot of your quotes you could have just quoted and not given a disclaimer. I would have just believed you that I've seen you memorize quotes before and spout long
Oh
quotes off,
yeah,
so I would have just believed you that they were all true. But no,
it's
I
one
think for
big
our listener, a
copyright
couple,
circle, right? Like a lot of these quotes aren't
right?
mine. 99% of them are not me. Go look up Peter Crone. Go look up Tony Robbins. Go look up Joe Dispenza. Go look up Brene Brown.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, these are. Thank you for saying
Great
that, because
people.
this isn't Phillip Enkey. Yeah.
But a lot of it's in there. So a lot of it is you now.
It's in there.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I think for our listener, some key takeaways. It's like, if you want to lead, start with yourself. If you need to love yourself. If you feel like there's people to forgive, start by forgiving yourself. So much good stuff today, Phillip.
It's the good news,
Hopefully
man.
we can.
It's the good news.
Yeah. Hopefully we can do this again. Tate, any last thoughts?
Well, we still got to squeeze in the last question, and my favorite one, but it's, how does Phillip want to be remembered?
Oh, I love that question. It's one of my practices that I write what I want, the 5 things that I want, that I love, that I'm manifesting. My personal motto is, if no one else loves you, I do. And that started with myself, and now I can feel it for others. So I want to be remembered as someone who loved himself, and by a natural extension, loved others genuinely. And I think that's how we heal the world. That's how we change the culture. The culture will change, to your question earlier. It's going to happen. The day is coming where people will naturally love and forgive. And when somebody loses their themselves for a moment, people will just respond with grace and compassion. I'm a big believer in that. But it starts with ourselves. That's how I want to be. That's how I want to be remembered. If no one else loves you, I do.
That's amazing.
Awesome. Well, we might have to do this again, Phillip. So appreciate
You guys are
all the
awesome.
great things you
And-
shared, and
Yeah.
go ahead, Phillip.
I know, I'd love to. Where are you guys located? We should go have lunch sometime.
Arizona.
Right? Yeah, we're both in Arizona. But yes.
I'm coming, man. I'm coming, bro.
Okay.
We're going to do it.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, I love you guys. Thanks for having me. This has been so fun.
I appreciate having Phillip on today. If you want to follow Phillip Enkey and listen to his music or check out his social media, the best way to follow Phillip would be to start at his website, www.philipenkey.
Thanks for joining us on the Everyday Leader podcast. If you're ready to take your leadership journey even further, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for more insights and practical tips. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram to stay a part of our growing community. Just follow the links in the show notes. If this episode impacted you, please help us spread the word and share the link with a friend from wherever you're listening.